Morning everyone, my name is Sietze from Ultimate Fishing. My apologies in advance for the very Dutch name and very Dutch accent. We are today in Belle-île-en-Mer. It literally translates to beautiful island in the sea with the boys from Gwinear Angling. On this island in Brittany, the headquarters of Ultimate Fishing is located. The guys are visiting the showroom, looking at all the beautiful new products, and we took this morning to go fishing. And in particular, not only fishing, we are taking the time to look at some difference between all the Xorus lures. Of course, in the UK at the moment, the Patchinko and the Frosty are very well known, so we won't go too in depth on those. But in particular, in France and mainland Europe, the best-selling one is the Xorus Asturie. For some reason, every time I travel to the UK to visit the shops, I get the same feedback. It's not very popular. People don't really know how to fish it, how to walk the dog it, and that's one of the few problems. It is, compared to the Patchinko and the Frosty, it is not a walk the dog lure. You can make it walk the dog if you know how it works, but it's not the most efficient way to fish it. It's fished very fast, very erratic, very skittering action. It's an amazing way to find your fish, to find active fish, and even to activate inactive fish basically. So in short, the patch has the ability, if you fish it properly, to pivot almost around its own axle. So with a lot of movement with your rod, you can fish it for a very long time on the same spot. So if you know the fish are holding in one concentrated area, the patch is the way to go. The Frosty looks a bit like a patch, but it's not. The cup mouth is a lot smaller, so it displaces a lot less water and it moves a lot wider. So the Asturie, at the moment, not this morning, it's almost flat calm. That's where the Frosty would come into play. But the Asturie is in almost all conditions the most popular one. To give you an idea, in France 90% of our Xorus sales are of the Asturie, and in particular the size 130, which I'm holding here, and the 150. So now we're going to explain you a little bit about how to fish the Asturie in the proper way. Like I just said, a lot of people commented on how it's hard to walk the dog, or even how it doesn't cast really far, which actually it does cast further than a Patchinko. When it comes to casting most Xorus lures, it's a funny thing, the less effort you put in, the more distance you get out. So first of all, we start with quite a long drop. So normally some people keep it all the way up there. I prefer to keep it almost even below my starting guide. For the guys who know your bait fishing or carp fishing, a lot of casting instructors explain your right arm does nothing if you're right-handed, and your left arm, just with a short flick, pulls the handle towards you. If you overpower this lure, it will start twisting and turning and decreases considerably your casting distance. So for the Asturie, it's almost too simple. Move it backwards, a short flick, and it flies very far. If this would be a Patchinko, I would start gently fishing it walk the dog while slowly retrieving to keep it on the spot. But it's not, it's an Asturie, and it's a lure you fish really fast. It almost looks too stupid to believe until you see how it works. We had some fish on them this morning, there will be some nice images of those. So you're quite aggressively, with a bit of force, fishing your rod while reeling considerably faster than you would usually do. This causes the Asturie to scatter and skitter. It will dive if it hits a wave, it will jump if it hits a wave, and it's basically just a pure panic reaction for the fish. Consider if a mullet or a mackerel or a scat would be chased by a big bass, the last thing it will do is look around, oh wait, there's a big bass, and very slowly continue moving in the surface. It will flee as fast as it can. With this one as well, more often than not, you will get a second chance because you're just riling them up. If you're fishing slowly walk the dog, the fish will be following for a bit, and when you finally convince them to take, if you miss them, you more often than not won't get a second chance. Because you're fishing it so fast, in some instances you will have a lot of missed fish or just swirls and boils behind your lure. This is basically the fish telling you, talking to you, I want something slower. Usually if after 2 or 3 casts they won't take, but do follow or boil behind. If you switch to a patch, a Frosty, a Z-claw, a duo pencil, any classical walk the dog bait in the profile matching your fishing scenario, more often than not they just bang on. So if you need to cover large areas of ground and you want to quickly find out where the fish are, it's an amazing fish finder. Because the aerodynamic and also aquadynamic shape, it can handle some pretty rough conditions, some big swells, some big winds. The spot we were fishing just now was just outside of this bay, and the guy said as well, it looks very Cornish here, the guy said as well, I would have never fished a topwater in this spot. The first cast they were behind it, we had one each, so it's just an amazing lure in almost all conditions. In this condition I would fish it a bit slower. So for example, if you would be fishing it where we just were this morning, I would really fish it like this. So it dives, it will jump, it will be all over the place, it will be flying over the surface, but the bass don't care, and you just need something. It's a spot where any pachinko, any walk the dog bait wouldn't be hardly be possible to fish. When it comes to situations like these, even in calmer situations, I will still prefer the estuary over anything else, unless I know I need to find the fish in a more confined area, where I will switch to the Patchinko or a Frosty, depending on conditions, or a Z-claw or the other ones. In this scenario, where it's nice and flat calm, so the patch would be more like this, and here I would still fish it a lot faster than you normally do. There's a lot of people fishing their Patchinko like this, same as at home in the Netherlands, but unfortunately, in my opinion, the Patchinko loses its efficiency when fishing it this fast, and even in flat calm situations, it's a lot better choice to stick with the estuary basically.
Are you a happy man, Ryan?
I'm a very happy man.
What did that come on?
The Asturie, white Asturie.
Good fight?
Yeah, definitely.
Lovely healthy fish, isn't it? Beautiful.
Good stuff.
Let's get it back.
Alright, last but definitely not least, we're going to do a little bit of talking about color selection. In this case, I'm holding the estuaries, but in theory this color selection works for almost every hard bait, and in particular topwaters. I'm going to stick with the Xorus family, so this advice I'm going to give you works exactly the same for the Frosty, for the Patch, but like I said, also for your Megabass, your Duo, your any other brand or any other type of topwater. So in the Xorus family, we have three main families of colors. We have the solids, so in this case the white, it can be the matte Lançon, Lancon for the guys in the UK. Lançon is French for sandeel, but I can't force myself to pronounce it as Lancon. The white, the matte Lançon, the nacre, which is French for mother of pearl, at least solid, completely solid colors. The second one, and probably the biggest group we have and the most popular ones, especially in France where the water is crystal clear and the fishing is very technical, are the ghost colors. In this case it's the cabot, or for the UK the cabot. It's completely see-through, and in those ghost families there are two versions. So you have the ones like the cabot, which is completely translucent, there is no flash plates, there are no internals, and then other ones like the ghost Lançon, or in this case the ghost iwashi. Iwashi is Japanese for sardine. It has a flash plate in the middle. So in theory, it's always fishing, so the theory goes far but not always far enough. Early morning and early or late in the evening, so the, so to say, golden hours, the white ones are our most popular ones. And in this case, I'm mainly talking in clear water situations. If it's really moody, really cloudy, you can still get away with white. But especially here in Brittany, and it would be the same in Falmouth, in Selcombe Estuary, those crystal clear waters, I would not fish too much with white, even though white is one of the best colors, but in particular early in the morning and late in the evening. The ghost ones, and in particular colors like the cabot, the water here is extremely clear. The cabot is our #1 bestseller in Brittany, so it would be expected to be the same for spots like Cornwall, like some places in Wales, or anywhere where it's really clear. It has no flash plate, it's not too shiny, and it's for clear water and bright sunshine conditions. If you're fishing in a bit of more mixed weather, when there is fairly like today, it's clouded but it's not too moody. You have a bit of sunshine, but the water is still very clear and it's not very overcast. The flash plate comes into play. Especially in very technical fisheries, or when you're starting to get followers or mistakes, the flash plate can put the fish off. But when there is a bit more cloud cover, the flash plate can be very effective. The last, and for me one of the lesser used colors, in particular when I'm over here, I live in the Netherlands, so the water is not as clear, so I use it quite a bit at home. And in the UK they're very popular as well. The last category is the metal, or the holographic, the flashy category. All of these are completely covered in holographic foil. and they are very bright and very flashy. These I would only use when it's proper British or Dutch weather. So when it's really cloudy, when it's really dark, when you almost need, you can't even wear your sunglasses because you can't see anything. Those type of days, the metal ones work really well. So we have, this case is the metal AU, which is a very popular one. If you're fishing in estuaries, the black mullet is a really popular one, or anywhere where mullet are present basically. But to be fair, the color is really effective, but try to not use them straight away. In particular, when you're fishing clearer water, it can definitely put the fish off. That's my 4 color selection, or actually if in the ghost category, if you count the flash plates and the no flash plate, my 5 colors. Which exact color in those opaque solid colors, in the ghost colors, in the flash colors you pick is obviously dependent on what your preference is, what you think your fish will like. The Aji is one of my favorites. Aji is Japanese for scat, horse mackerel. Bass really love those. So usually together with the metal AU, the Aji and the black mullet are my 2 favorites in the flash, and the rest is basically up to you. That's my advice when it comes to topwater colors. Alright, we just did the Asturie. Probably in France, after the Asturie, one of our most popular products are by miles and miles the Megabass Dark Sleeper. The Dark Sleeper, it gained some popularity in the UK the past year, but there's a lot of people with a lot of success on them, but almost just as much or maybe even more people who bought them or are doubting on whether or not to buy them. Because they just have so many questions. And that's very understandable, because the way of fishing the Dark Sleeper in saltwater for bass, in the continent it's sea bass, I'm sorry guys, is very different and very counterintuitive compared to your other soft plastics. So for the guys who don't know it, the Dark Sleeper is for the human eye a goby imitation. The goby imitation actually also fishes as a goby, because bass love goby, in particular in estuaries or bays and copes like these. Same as all over Europe and in the UK. But it can be so much more. If you look at our catalogue, there's a lot of craw baits, funky colors. There's even a corlezzo, which is basically a baby res. But because it has such a weird wide profile, there's some fins and appendages. When it moves on the bottom, it can be literally everything. The orange ones can be a squat lobster, the brown ones can be a crab, the green ones can be a green crab, it can be a big prawn. It's just something that moves. Especially in these type of situations, more often than not, the bass are not actually there for bait fish. 90% of their diet in a spot like this consists of crustaceans and other small moving creatures. When you're fishing a paddle tail, a hard plastic, a topwater, you will get a bite every now and then. It's a reaction strike, but the Dark Sleeper is a much more imitative approach. The Dark Sleeper allows itself to be fished real nice through the rubble. The hook is hidden between 2 parts of the dorsal fin, and the lead is very widely shaped and almost for 90% underneath the hook shank. So even if you twitch it a bit, it falls upside down, it will always fall back on its side again. So how to fish it? Some people are fishing it, told me they were fishing it straight retrieve when I was doing a demo day in the UK. Some people are jigging it like a hard plastic. But it's actually, if you've done some wrestling with a Texas rig or perch fishing for a Carolina rig, it's quite similar to that, which is it's a bit weird when you start doing it, but it's incredibly effective, and I'm going to show you how. We're going to cheat a little bit, in particular when you're fishing very slow and when there is a high pressure environment and high angling pressure that is. The water is clear, the fish are difficult, and you're giving the fish a lot of time to look at your bait. it helps a lot to flavor your bait, to add some attractant. If you look at most of our soft plastics, or most Japanese soft plastics in general, they are heavily scented. Think about the aniseed on the X-layers and spindleworms. And from the Australian brand Helco, we have the catch scent. The best description is the X-layer from hell. For some reason, even though we're fishing saltwater, the freshwater estuary is our most preferred option. It smells like a very terrible mixture of sardines and anise, and there's a lot of pheromones in it as well. And in particular with a bait like the Dark Sleeper, because you can fold open the dorsal, it's an amazing lure where you can hide. You squeeze some in there, fold it shut, spread it all over. Behind the pecs is a really good place, and what's left you just smear over there. You'd be surprised how long it lasts. That's one of the reasons, actually, besides that the aniseed is a bit more apparent in the freshwater one than the saltwater one, but the freshwater estuary one stays on a lot longer. The guys were surprised even after half an hour of fishing. If you reel it in and it's floating past your nose for your next cast, you actually get a whiff of the X-layer from hell. It won't always work, it won't always make the difference, but especially in situations where there's not too much current, where, like I said, the fish are feeding hard on actual crustaceans. Think about your peeler, your ragworm. It's very smelly baits for the bait fisherman, and it can definitely make the difference. Even if it doesn't make a difference in amount of bites, the quality of bites you get are a lot better, and they will get it in their mouth a little bit longer and better. So for the Dark Sleeper, it works in a lot of places. It also drifts extremely well, and it's even well used for the boat if you're making long drifts close to shore. But in particular, when you have a mixture of sandy bottom like we're standing on now, with some rocks, with some vegetation, you cast it out like any other lure. That's how fishing starts. You chuck it, let it sink to the bottom depending on the depth. And then it's basically, which is the most unnatural thing, because you think with bass fishing snagging is a necessary evil. You're just dragging it over the bottom like this, pick up your slack and let it sit down. The oddest thing is, even after 3, 5 or even longer seconds or more seconds, you will still get a bite, because the bass are really just having a mooch around, swimming through all these channels. If you can see when the water was high, it was clear, we could see the sandy bottom between the rocks, and those feeding channels are perfect. If you hit a rock like now with a little snag, just pop it and you can just continue on. It's out again, and you can continue on dragging it. Sometimes you can just swim it a bit, just a slow retrieve above the bottom, let it sit down again, and then you hop it, you drag it, you swim it. If you already got one in your box and you're in clearer water, I advise you just before you start chucking it out, find a rock pool. We just did it here. Unfortunately for the camera, it's not so clear anymore at this point. And you will see it just looks like anything that's moving and anything that the bass will like to eat. When it comes to sizes and weight, it's in particular the 3.8 inch and the 3/4 of an ounce, which is 21 grams, or the 1 ounce, which is 28 grams, which are the most popular ones. You don't want to get it too much off the bottom. So even in shallow ground, I would advise most of the time I just fish the 28 grams. The 21 grams if it's really shallow, or if there's current and you want a nice drift. Keep in mind, compared to most pre-rigged or pre-packaged lures on the market, if there's a weight on the box, that's the weight of the jig head. So with some of these articulated lures, they're talking about the jig head. So if you see 28 grams on there, or 1 ounce, don't get scared. It's not 28 grams of weight of lead in there. That's the total weight. So for the 28 grams, we're talking about the soft plastic, the lead and the hook. So in reality, there's only, depending on which one, there's 14 to 18, 19 grams in there, which is still quite heavy for shallow ground, but you just want to keep it on the ground. One of the other key points of the Dark Sleeper, why it's so effective to fish this way. First of all, obviously, like I just said, it imitates a lot of different food types for the bass, but it hardly snags, even compared to weedless jig heads like our Decoy VJ36 or the new Xorus Texas Eel, which are amazing for slow retrieving a spindle worm, an X-layer above the ground with a bed of rocks. But when you're fishing hard on the deck, even those will snag because of the position of the eye. So the internals of the Dark Sleeper, they look like this. Everything breaks. This one didn't survive the rest. So as you can see, almost for 90% of all the weight of the sinker is below the hook shank, which makes it extremely stable. So even if it will flip up and down, when you set it back on the bottom, it will always turn straight again. The position of the line tie, the eye of the hook, is also a bit different compared to 90-degree normal standardized jig hooks. With this one, if it falls in, first of all, if you have like a crevice or a gap in the rocks, because it's so wide from below, it doesn't really fall in. Even from the front, where your normal, even a 30-40 gram jig head would fit in here, it just doesn't really fall in. If it falls in and starts to get snagged, because of the position of the lead, how it's balanced, and how the eye of the hook is positioned, if you pull it a couple times, it usually pops right out. With a 90-degree jig head, you would pull the hook forward and the jig head forward, make it even worse. But with this, even in snaggy spots, because it's on the nose, it will always pop out, or more often than not. Losing products, losing lures is part of bass fishing. But with this one, you will be surprised. I've had some friends in Cornwall actually, who told me in advance it was their most snaggiest spots, and even they didn't lose a single one. It still happens, but that's why it's such an effective lure to fish in this environment where it's normally very hard to present on a lure rod creature bait or creature type bait. That's how I explain it. When I say lure rod, it's a good thing to talk about lure rods a little bit. There is one problem or thing to keep in mind with the Dark Sleeper. It's not the weed guard, that's the problem, because it's just two flappy fins. They don't put up too much resistance for your hook set, but it's a big, bulky soft plastic. So the fish, especially the bigger ones, they have quite a bit of grip on it, and you need a slightly stronger rod to properly set the hook. If you're fishing an all-round rod, I would suggest the Injection SP82 medium heavy, the one we just used for the Asturie. It's a very nice do-it-all rod with more than enough backbone. One rod that came on the market last year in France and the UK is the new Akuru range, and in particular the SP86, the SP86 medium heavy. It has a really strange rating from 14 till 55 grams, and is in particular designed for Dark Sleeper fishing, both from the shore and from the boat. By the way, I've just shown how to fish the Dark Sleeper. That slightly explains the strange lure rating. So the 14 gram is in the tip. So you have a nice, lovely, soft tip to drag and bump and hop your lure between the debris, between the rocks, between the kelp. And to set the hook, and not only to set the hook, but also to extract your fish from this gnarly stuff, the 55 grams is more down below. Amazing rod for soft plastics in general that are a bit heavier. You heavier jig heads, you heavier, even Topwaters, it handles perfectly fine, but it's a lot faster than the Injection. So if you're looking for a dedicated, rough ground, a bit stiffer, a bit faster, pokier rod, and in particular for your Dark Sleeper fishing, the Akuru range in general, but in particular the model, the 86 medium heavy, is the rod of choice for us.